What's up, everybody? It's me, Chase, here with Dolphins versus the World, and thank you for tuning in. As always, I'm joined by our producer, Joel, here, and Anthony, my co-host. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. 2 weeks away.
2 weeks. It is fast approaching. We finally have wrapped up preseason here. It has went by quicker than I thought. Feels like just yesterday we were getting started with training camp stuff, and that wrapped up, and now preseason's officially over. And yeah, it's putting on the final touches right before the season, and LA is right around the corner. They should probably are you aware by any chance if they're getting out there early? I know that's kind of becoming more common with some teams for just a cross-country travel.
I have no idea. I know I think it's like a 4-hour time difference because I'm in Arizona. And so right now, like we're recording, it's 6 o'clock, 6:11 for me. I know it's 9 o'clock for you guys on Eastern time. So I think they're like 5-hour difference. And like the game starts here at 1, which is like for their time. So like, I don't know. I really think it's more so the travel rather than like a time difference, because at the end of the day, I mean, playing at 4 o'clock versus 1 o'clock, you know what I mean? Like they're going to play what feels like 4 o'clock their time. I don't think that's much of a difference. I think it's more so just getting out there, a little early as far as not wanting to fly like 2 days before. But I mean, with the way airfare and stuff like that, these team planes, I mean, it's really, I think it's, we make more of a deal about it. I think more so if this was like in the middle of the season, maybe, but for week 1, I think they're going to be rested. They're probably going to get all week off. So I don't know if they'll travel early. If it is, it's not going to be like when the Patriots came down here, like for all week. I don't think. Normally team travel days on Saturday, I believe, right? I believe it's on Saturday. So maybe they go out like Friday instead. I don't know.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is just I think maybe for the team kind of just to get into season mode, kind of get away from anything you have at home, sort of just bond with the team a bit. Maybe they get out early, but I don't know their plans. Keep an eye on it, though. Something to look out for. And with that being said, though, they did just finish the last preseason game versus Jags. And, the preseason officially over. I guess the game didn't end, unfortunately, due to fortunate set of circumstances. And I'll just say hoping for the best for Davis here. I did see he was released, so that was good news. And that was scary sight. Never good to see, especially someone on your own team. But that was crazy. What did you think, though, just about either the situation or the game as a whole? What did you see?
Well, with the situation, I mean, I made a post last night just talking about, how it can be, it could bring you back to reality. The fact that like there's guys out there literally going out there playing a game for our entertainment and risking their bodies and their lives. I looked up a stat. So the average career in the NFL is only 3 years. It's like a little over 3 years. And for those that aren't aware, obviously the 53-man projection is what we're going to be talking about for a significant part of this podcast. There's 90 people on each roster right now. And so you're going to cut, again, just doing the math, right? You're cutting 37 people per roster. You do that over 32 teams, that's almost 1,200 players that are going to get cut, and you can only have 16 on a practice squad. So that's 512 people. Okay, so almost 1,200 people are about to get cut, players, and only not even half of them are going to even make a practice squad. And so it's the sad reality is it's not just with any player, But, you see this with Dawood Davis, and it's, it's hard to say it, but it's like he's dealing with all of this and he's going through that ultimately to be cut. And it's just a reality that as fans, I feel like it's easy when we get caught up in the heat of the moment and, we watch these players and we get pissed and, we get heated and frustrated. But at the end of the day, they are human beings that are playing a game that they love, that we all love. And the sad reality is that for a lot of people, this is only a temporary part of their life for most, actually all of them. And they have to live with these types of things moving forward. So I hope for his sake that, everything's good with him. From all reports, it seems that it is. But yeah, it's just one of those moments, kind of like the Tua thing last year, where you just kind of sit back and you don't really care about football actually anymore. It's more so the person.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. And then as far as the cuts go and us doing the 53, I'd kind of like to see us go out and get some of the names from other teams that got cut. I don't have any names specifically in mind. I just sort of think that kind of at the bottom end of this roster, the talent is not great. I mean, I don't think on any roster it's going to be great, but even by
certain positions though on this team, I feel like this year more than ever, I'm like,
exactly.
So like, yeah, I think that
years ago when we won in Brian Flores' first year, like the bottom end of the roster. Well, in that year, I guess the bottom end of the roster was as good as the top end. But
right.
But yeah, I kind of feel it's a little weak this year. Not sure how that happened, but before we get into the preseason game and kind of our closing thoughts for preseason as a whole, let's touch around the sort of the big news for the day.
Sieler.
Yeah, love it. He's honestly one of the most underrated players on the team, and I could go as far to say as around the league, he's definitely on that list as underrated players. I mean, he has like 3 or 4, sometimes even 5 plays a game where he just completely dominates and blows
through him for at least 2-3 plays a game for sure. 2-3 easily.
He is a monster, and at that number, great deal for both the player and the team. I do recall a story seeing that like 2 years ago he was still living in like an RV or something. So now good for him. He will not be doing that anymore, my guess would be, unless he wants to. But
I think he actually lives in the RV. Like I saw like he was doing. Yeah, he just does it during the NFL season. He said because now again, this isn't an RV. Like I'm sure it's a really really nice RV. But I think he said he does it during the season just to kind of get away and just focus on football. So love that.
Well, it's working, whatever he's doing.
Dude, we'll do whatever he's doing. But I was a little surprised, honestly. I think a lot of people were, especially with Wilkins, and we'll get into that a little bit. But I mean, what a deal, honestly. The thing with Zach Sieler to me was, I was sitting here saying I thought it'd be Christian Wilkins, and we'll talk about what this means for his future. But I thought Zach Sieler. I mean, how free agency is, you get overpaid. Because you're trying to outbid for other teams. And so Zach Sieler, I thought, could easily make 13, 14, no problem base salary as an interior defensive lineman. And the fact that you got him for 3 years, only $20 million is guaranteed. And even with the incentives, his incentives, it's a 3-year deal with incentives to earn up to 38.65. So if you do the math on that, it's not even 13 million a year after the incentives. And I think the base contract is like somewhere like in the mid to high 10 millions. So the fact that you're getting a guy of his caliber for 11 million is pretty remarkable. I really did not think he would be with the team, because I thought that the Christian Wilkins deal would kind of price him out of Miami. But, moving into the Christian Wilkins thing, I really like Christian Wilkins and I want him on the team. And it's kind of like how I feel about the running back room with Chris Brooks and Savon Ahmed, to where after how well Savon performed, it's going to be hard to justify cutting him. And so, a little foreshadow of what's to come, on at least on my 53. But with Zach Sieler and Christian Wilkins, like, I really want Christian Wilkins to be on this team, but how do you justify asking, if you're Christian Wilkins, how do you justify asking for at least double what the guy next to you, who is not half as good as you? I would say Zach Sieler is like an 80-85% Christian Wilkins as far as talent and production. And so how how do you as the Dolphins, or how do you as Christian Wilkins justify getting paid what I've heard north of $20 million when the guy next to you, who's relatively similar as far as production, it's not like we're talking Aaron Donald versus Zach Sieler. Like, how do you justify paying someone like that $21-22 million after incentives when Zach Sieler's making, 11 million before incentives? So love the deal. Love the fact that we at least got someone signed, because dear Lord, our interior defensive line just got absolutely walloped against Jacksonville. And granted, they have a top 10 offensive line in football, at least I think. So, but yeah, Zach Sieler, love the move. But not sure what this means for Christian Wilkins, moving forward.
Yeah. I agree with you. I kind of thought that they'd get a deal done with Wilkins first, and it would price Sieler out. Because
what I thought, and that's what I heard too.
Because, like you said, in free agency, someone's going to outbid, and that could be the other way around. If Wilkins thinks he's worth that, then I'm not going to disagree with him. If someone's willing to pay him that, then that's a reality. He's got to do what's best for him. I think what's best for the team is finding a way to keep him. I'm not sure how that's going to happen. I still think it does happen. I don't know if it's sooner than later, but in a worst case scenario, I think he would get traded for a relatively strong asset if there's no way he could come to terms here, because they're not going to let him walk for free. But I think it's going to be able to. We'll come.
I hope it does. Because I really like Christian Wilkins. Honestly, if I'm being real, just unpacking on things real quick, the only thing I'm worried about losing Christian Wilkins is really what it does to the locker room. And I think that's a legitimate concern to have. I'm not necessarily concerned about losing the player as much. I mean, I would not like to have a good player leave, but it's more so what I think it would do to the locker room, and the fact that Christian's done everything the right way. What example does that set? But, I honestly think, as far as projecting what's going to happen, I can't see them getting rid of him, because at the end of the day, he has zero leverage. The only leverage he could say is, I'm going to demand a trade. And they could say, okay, well, we're not trading you, and you're going to lose out on $11 million. They have him this year for $11 million, which, it's always weird talking about this, because it's like, you know what I mean? Like $11 million. Like, what are we talking about here? Yeah. And then they can tag him, and he'll be guaranteed next year to get 20 million, I believe, what it is. So I don't think, unless obviously there's hypotheticals where it's like, yeah, if they get like a crazy offer for Christian, but I've seen the idea float around that like he could be involved in a Jonathan Taylor trade. There's 0% chance that happens. A team would have to offer at least a first-round pick for Christian Wilkins. Yep. And also, I just don't think it happens, because this is your window. And at the end of the day, if you can have Christian Wilkins, think about this. Christian Wilkins and Zach Sieler together are making $22 million. Christian Wilkins on his own wants about that. So just contemplate that for a second. So I think that the most likely scenario is you keep Christian Wilkins this year. You tell him, dude, play this out. We'll revisit it next year. Internally, you're thinking we can just tag him, and then after that, let him walk. I don't know if he wants to make it messy and ask for a trade. Who knows? I also think the Jonathan Taylor thing changes a lot. If the Dolphins can't get Jonathan Taylor, does that motivate them to maybe give a little way on Christian Wilkins? I don't know. From what I've heard, and take it with a grain of salt, because I was also, from people I listen to, and also people I've talked to, not just necessarily people I talk to, but also listening to other people talk about this that are in the building or know people in the building. They've been told the Christian Wilkins deal will get done. We've seen the coaches, but from what I've gathered, and I've kind of floated this idea out to other people who know the numbers but can't tell me, because there's certain things you can't say. I floated the idea to a certain person that I talked to. I said, just tell me if I'm in the ballpark. I said, Christian Wilkins is being offered 16 to 17 million, and he's asking for 20. And the response I got from that person was, you're definitely very close and in the ballpark. Then I reached out to another person who, again, not super close with, but publicly he has a lot of great info. And so I wanted to kind of get a scoop. And his response was, quote, I quote, oh, he's asking for north of 20 million. That's what I was told. Again, I'm not trying to say that that's 100% truth, but from everyone I've talked to, it's at least in that 20 million plus range. And so how likely are the Dolphins to pay Christian Wilkins $21-22 million after they just paid a guy who's relatively close in talent and production half of that, so we'll see. It's just a weird situation, but I don't think he'll go anywhere this year, regardless of the contract, because you're in a win now mode.
Yeah. And then a thing I kind of want to add about the Jonathan Taylor situation is I know the Colts, they said they want to get it done by Tuesday, and I'm sure they do, but I don't think that's a hard deadline. I think if something can't be agreed by Tuesday, they would have no issues dragging it out. And I think the Dolphins would still be on the phone talking with them. I don't think Tuesday would, if it doesn't happen by then, I don't think that it'd be any indication that A, it's not going to happen. And B,
but here's the thing, real quick, because I was listening. I think it was Omar Kelly and Alan Poupart were talking about this, and they brought up a good point that I hadn't thought of. I'm not sure if Alan or Omar did, but they said the Tuesday deadline might actually be more of a deadline than we think. And the reason for that is because, for those that don't know, we're about to get into the 53 on this episode. But if he's dealing with injury, you either have to, you're going to have to put him on your roster. So he's going to count towards your 53. But then if he is on your roster and he's injured and maybe he's not able to play the first 4 weeks, like, what do you do with that? Because if he's on your roster and no one's traded for him, they need to figure out what to do if he's actually really injured. I don't know. So I think that idea was floated to where that roster projection might actually have something to do with it, because if he's on the roster, it has something to do with like how much he's paid and the guarantee of what he's paid with the injuries and designating him on the 53 or something, to where, there's more complex verbiage to it, but essentially they might be realistically actually really trying to get this done by the 53. And who knows? I know for a fact Barry Jackson's reported, and I'm subscribed to the Miami Herald, so everyone doesn't have to, and we can kind of just report stuff here. He has said publicly that the Dolphins have given multiple offers. The Colts have multiple offers from the Dolphins have had multiple offers from the Dolphins. And as it stands right now, the Dolphins are just kind of going to sit back and wait till Tuesday is the understanding. They're going to sit back, wait till Tuesday, and the Colts are either going to say yes or no to the offer, because it's either the Dolphins or the Colts. There's no anyone else. Yeah, there's other teams involved. It's the Dolphins or the Colts right now. And so, I think it actually is more of a deadline of Tuesday. I'm not saying that if it doesn't happen Tuesday, it'll never happen. But, I don't, dude, who knows? I'm not really getting my hopes up. I would love him on the team, but like we said, I just, after Dalvin Cook, like, I'm not getting my hopes up. If I wake up and see the report, then I'll, pop a bottle of champagne. If I don't, okay, we move on.
Yeah. I think it's definitely wait and see mode. I wouldn't anticipate being glued to your phone here thinking the news is going to come at any minute. I think we'll see it by Tuesday. But again, me personally, honestly, like, I agree with you that they definitely want to get it done because of the roster situation, but it'd be the 53rd person on the roster. Like, they'll be able to figure out a way to make it work if they have to. But I think they prefer to get it done. So hopefully we'll see something by Tuesday as far as a yes or a no, just so we don't have to keep waiting. But this could go on, in my opinion. I don't think we have a hard deadline here. And so let's get into this about the last preseason game.
Yeah.
It was a good one, at least from the standpoint of starters on starters, seeing extended drives. It wasn't just one drive and then everyone's out.
Right.
Honestly, my biggest takeaway, first and foremost, was the corner situation is not great. Trevor Lawrence was throwing all over the place in the limited action he did see. What about you? What was your first takeaway?
So if we're starting on defense, I actually I don't know. Personally, there's not much I can take away from it. And I say that because like you had your two starters at defensive tackle were, I mean, there were times where you had Brandon Pilley and Josiah Bronson on there. There were times you had Bronson and Twyman, and I don't have either of them making the 53. So if I'm to sit here and say two guys I don't even think that are good enough to make a 53-man roster going against a top 10 offensive line, like it wasn't even a realistic drive, of what's to come. Number one, Vic Fangio's calling a lot of man coverage, and he doesn't do that. So you're asking Noah to cover Calvin Ridley man to man. That's not a good idea. Cornerbacks don't travel in his scheme. Xavier definitely does not like to travel. And so if you're an offense, you're just going to line up your best wide receiver against their weakest cornerback. But you're just doing man to man. You're doing very, very simple stuff. Again, that incredible catch by Calvin Ridley that was challenged and is stood. That was man to man coverage. What do you think is going to happen when Calvin Ridley, who's a top 20 wide receiver in the NFL, is going against Noah Benogany? Not good things. And so I actually wasn't that concerned because I'm like, they're not really doing anything crazy. They're running up the middle because they know these two aren't even good enough to make an NFL roster. And then they were just picking on Noah Benogany. So I wasn't too concerned with the defense. I think you get Sieler and Wilkins in there. And then when Fangio's actually putting in his zone coverage, and I don't even think Noah will be a starter. I think it's Eli Apple. I think you're going to get a different story.
Yeah. I do agree with you there. Some other things I kind of just want to talk about with the game real quick here. Again, I like the efficient. It was, even though it was a vanilla offense, it was still very efficient moving the ball down the field, which I think I like to see. I'd like to see a bit more efficiency in the red zone. I did see on your Twitter earlier and all over, like that one play in the red zone was strange.
Chosen. I'll talk.
Yeah, I think kind of it was also a bit of Tua, just more so like it's preseason. Like they told him, just get the ball out of your hands. Like who cares if it's an incompletion? Like this isn't life or death here. And then the last thing I do want to say is this, in my mind, is something to watch for. Mike McDaniel last year, I believe he only won one challenge all season, and then he lost a challenge in the preseason too. So if that becomes a trend where we're sitting here at week 6 and he's only won one challenge or 0, or, he's missing a bunch of challenges, that's a problem. And it should be easily fixable. I don't know how that's a problem. We should just have someone in the booth radioing down who can look at the play in real time and know what happened. I don't understand how that's happening. So I'm keeping an eye on that. I think it's just going to be fixed. I think I was kind of just variance first year coach last year, and I expect to not for the problem to be fixed. But if that's a problem that continues, I don't even know. That's crazy that we can't win challenges. I don't think you should be losing challenges that often.
No, yeah, I agree. For some reason, a lot of people get on Mike McDaniel about that. I don't know if people know this, but Mike McDaniel is not Superman. Or the Flash. He can't go back in time and rewatch the play up close. He's standing there with people talking in his ear up in the booth that are watching the replay saying, throw the challenge flag. We don't think it's a pass, or we don't think it's a catch, or we think it's a fumble, or whatever the challenge is. It's not, he may be looking up on the Jumbotron real quick, but at the end of the day, especially if you're playing at, an away stadium, let's say you're playing in Jacksonville, they're probably not going to show that replay a lot for the head coach, right? They're not going to let Mike McDaniel get this great look at the play unless it's something obviously like egregious where we've watched it on TV. Everyone in the stadium is looking up at the Jumbotron. But, that play happened. The Jaguars went all the way down the field. They're trying to have hurry up. And Mike McDaniel, even though it feels like a long time, has about 15 seconds to say, hey, is that a catch? The people watch it 3 or 4 times, and then in 15 seconds, let him know. So I agree with you. I just think there needs to be a better people making those decisions for him.
That's what I more so was thinking.
Right.
Whoever's putting in that spot, like he's got to point the right guy. If this trend continues, something's up here. If it continues to happen.
Right. But then the last thing I want to mention with the offense. So yeah, the chosen route. Chris Kaufman did a great job bringing it up, and I can't wait till the day when hopefully on Twitter and stuff I have like a huge following or as I'm reputable as a Chris Kaufman, because like I'll be watching. So when he posted that, I was watching watching the game, rewatching it, and creating notes for this podcast. And I go on Twitter and I see that. And again, I can't make this up. Well, maybe I could, but I'm watching that play and I'm going on Twitter to say, I actually thought the Dolphins offense was really efficient, and I was going to double down on, man, I don't know. Robbie Chosen for me is a toss-up of making this team because he cost the Dolphins a touchdown. I was going to post that, but then Chris Kaufman had posted what was wrong on this touchdown pass. And what happened is Robbie Chosen and Durham Smythe are running shallow crosses, drag routes, which is shallow cross, a drag route. You're just running across the field. Normally 5 to 5, 6, 7 yards depth. So typically what happens is when you're driving a car, if you have two routes intersecting, one person has to take one side and one person has to take the other. And it seemed to me that Robbie Chosen was supposed to go deeper on his drag route than Smythe. And if he does that, it puts the defender in a bind because there's a limited amount of space. He can't really run full speed. And based off of his angle and the yards after catch, he's going to get a touchdown there. Instead, it looked like both him and Smythe collided. And there was this weird moment where Tua was like, I don't know what to do. So yeah, he just threw it at Robbie Chosen. But ultimately with the offense, I thought that they were humming. Again, your first play is a 32-yard pass to Tyreek Hill. He looked great. But Connor Williams to me right now is my biggest concern on the entire roster. Like, think about that. I'm saying right now, Sunday, August 26th, Connor Williams is my biggest concern on the roster, because I don't have a concern with Teron Armstead because I feel fine with Kendall Lamb at left tackle. Isaiah Wynn, I'm higher on him than others have been. Robert Hunt, I'm not as high on Robert Hunt as other people. I think he's average. I see some people like, well, you're going to have to pay Robert Hunt $13 million. And I'm like, if the Dolphins offered him more than 8 right now, I'd be shocked because he's average. And then Austin Jackson is Austin Jackson. I can't, I can't, there's nothing I can do there, but he's looked a little better. But Connor Williams, again, snapping a football is like catching a football as a wide receiver. If you can't do that, then what the hell are you doing? Right? It's like, I don't quite understand it. And you can't even use this excuse that he hasn't played center because he had all of last year, all of last offseason. And then this offseason, I hate to say it, but dude, where the hell were you? You're sitting here, sitting out, saying, I want a new contract, asking the Dolphins for a new contract, and they're saying no. And you miss all of mini camp and training camp when you could have been helping out. And then you come to practice and here you are enjoying practices, looking a fool, in preseason, looking a fool, high snaps. I mean, he's had 3 high snaps in 2 weeks. And I'm honestly to the point where I'd much rather, I wouldn't be pissed off with Dan Feeney at center and Connor Williams at left guard. Maybe even try Lee Mike. I don't know. The snapping is a big issue. And the reason I say that is because, again, 32-yard play right off the bat. Now it's 2nd and 25 all of a sudden. Literally, they gained 32 yards and then they lost 25 of it. So think about that the entire drive netted like 15 yards, even though the first play was 32 yards. So it's a problem. We saw what happened. Do you remember when Tua was a rookie? I was about to say a freshman. Geez. When Tua was a rookie, we were about to go up 21-0 against the Chargers. I mean, we were absolutely demolishing them. It wasn't even kind of close. Like it was a laughing stock almost. And then there was the bad snap, which caused them to get a touchdown and get back in the game. So it's a big concern to me. Not a fan of it. There's no excuse for it. Again, there's no one can convince me that there's an excusable reason for a center in his second year to still have snapping issues. There's no reason at all. And it's an issue to me.
Yeah. And just to refresh everyone's memory for those who don't remember, the knock on Connor Williams when he came here and, it was announced that he was going to play center, was snapping issues could be a problem. And they were cleaned up during the year. There was a few problems like during the season, but that I think people kind of forgot. They kind of just assumed it'd be fixed and there'd be no more snapping issues. But yeah, that was
Chase,
last year.
Let me add this though, because I've seen people say that where they're like, it wasn't an issue last year. Yeah, he wasn't sailing the ball 10 feet over to his head, but I can count on two hands.
I agree.
I could count on two hands how many times where it was a high snap and two is having to read. Yeah. If for those that don't know, as a quarterback, what you are taught is when that ball is snapped, I should not have to put my hands anywhere above my head for that snap. It should be hitting me like right in that collarbone neck area. So again, if you're sitting there trying to like take a snap, where they put their hands, everyone's seen it when they put their hands there to grab, that's where that ball should be every single time. And I see some people that are like, Connor Williams didn't have snapping issues. Yeah, he did. Last year, he had many snapping issues during the season. There were many plays that were blown off timing because Tua had to jump up. And in this offense, like you were just alluding to and you're getting to, it's all about rhythm. It's all about timing. We can look at last week. There was a high snap to Tua where he had to hop up and grab it. Yeah, it didn't sail over his head. He had to hop up and grab it. And by the time he came down, the rhythm timing was all off, and it was a 4-yard loss. It was almost a safety for the Texans. So it's a big issue to me. And if you're Connor Williams, like I don't understand it. Normally you play better when you're looking for a contract, but I mean there's like a 2% chance that he's going to get a new contract. I would say like it's next to zero. There's no way they'll move you to left guard before you're going to get a new contract to play center, unless he has like the best year we've ever seen from a Dolphins center. Or like the best year among all centers this year. There's no way you can't.
Yeah, that's
Sorry, I get heated about that.
No, I totally agree with you, man. That's the first person who touches the ball is the center. The play goes from there. If the snap isn't good, then odds are the rest of the play isn't going to be very good.
Right.
But yeah, that's just something to keep an eye on. And everyone knows that the ball should be getting to the quarterback. Right in his chest, I think. Yeah. So everyone's going to be on him if that's not happening. If during the season there's issues, everyone will be calling for his head. But yeah, so let's anything else as far as preseason as a whole?
I mean, we can kind of talk about things as we as we go along. I think that as we're going through the 53, if we are like, hey, this person didn't make my 53 because this is what happened this last game. I think a lot of last game will kind of naturally be talked about maybe as we go through the 53.
Totally. All right. Well, yeah, let's get into it. And also this would be a good sort of exercise as well to say who we have starting for the first game, but I don't think most of the starters aren't going to be a surprise here. I think it's kind of been made clear throughout camp who's going to be starting. Obviously, just going down the list, we'll start offensively, and then we'll do defensive everything. We'll go through the whole offense. Actually, let's just real quick start with special teams. I think everyone knows it's going to be Blake Ferguson, Jake Bailey, and Jason Sanders as the three players making it there. And then I have returning punts, Braxton Berrios, and I did have Devon Achane returning kicks. I would say in the meantime, as far as speed goes, I guess you could put Mostert back there, but like I think the kickoffs are almost going to be like non-existent.
No, yeah, I agree with you. So special teams, I mean, we all pretty much know it. And honestly, with the speed you have on this team, I even if you put Braxton there for both, I mean, it's really not that heavy. Yeah,
Yeah, so then we'll go. Like I said, we'll do all offense and then we'll do all defense. Who's making the team? So QB, I'll go through starters that I just have. Starting quarterback Tua, Raheem Mostert, I got as my running back one. I see often that just kind of around the league, like people are saying Jeff Wilson is going to be the like main back. I don't think so at all. I think Mostert's going to see the majority of touches.
No.
Yeah, Ingold's going to be my
might not even be on the team.
Yeah, that's a possibility as well. And then Tyreek Hill. And my other receivers, Jalen Waddle, your two, Braxton Berrios in the slot. Tight end, you got Durham Smythe starting. And then my O-line, when healthy, is going to be Teron, Isaiah Wynn, Connor Williams, Robert Hunt, and Austin Jackson.
Yeah, so I agree with everything you listed. And let me touch on something real quick, because I think that a big part of listening to these types of podcasts is to learn. So if you're constructing a 53, and this is rules that everyone has to follow, well, definitely, obviously the teams, but we're just doing it hypotheticals because we're not employed by the Dolphins. That'd be cool, but whatever. Anyway, when you're constructing a 53, because you're going from 90 to 53, if you have players on IR, which the Dolphins, I don't know if you have anyone different, but right now on IR, I'm assuming it'll be Ramsey, Elijah Campbell, Robert Jones, and Nick Needham. I think I'm safe to say that we both have that, right?
Yes.
So when you have players on IR, for those out there, the team has to give them a roster spot before putting them on IR, because if you put them on IR and don't count them towards the 53, they're out all year. So obviously if someone has a season-ending injury and you want to keep them, I think we saw that maybe with Tanner Connor last year, or something similar happened where he gets injured, you put him on IR, he's gone all season, but you still want to keep him. So with Jalen Ramsey, Elijah Campbell, Robert Jones, and Nick Needham, we're technically going to have 4 people or 4 spots listed on the team that, I have them highlighted. I'm trying not to look at Chase's because I don't want to, be influenced at all, but they will count as 4 spots, and then you will put them on IR, and the rules for IR are the rules of IR are that you are gone for the first 4 weeks minimum, and you can bring up to 8 players back on the IR. So essentially, I just want to talk about my IR real quick. I'm going to keep Ramsey, Campbell, Robert Jones, and Needham on the 53, count them as spots, and then I'm going to put them on injured reserve. So 4 spots on my initial 53, I'm going to have to cut these players and then give them like a wink and say, you're going to make our 53. We just need to cut you to make room for these guys that are going to go on IR. So I just want to say that to start off with, and to the best of our abilities, we'll try to mention those people along the way, of who we think, will make the 53 technically, but only because those guys are on IR.
Yeah. And the thing with that is with those guys being on the roster first and then going to IR, the people who are going to have to be cut on the fringes of the roster, they could get poached by some other teams. So
correct.
That's just one of the problems with it, but that's the way the rules are. So
but some of these guys, the promise of being like, hey, you're going to make our 53, we just need to make room. Obviously they could get poached, but you could at least give them that to where, they know, and there's a little peace of mind. So
anyway. And then I'll go with here the reserves for offense. My QB2 is going to be Mike White. I think it's probably 2A and 2B. I think Mike White's going to be listed as the second quarterback.
But I agree. I don't think it really even, to be honest with you, if we're ever relying on either of those guys, I agree. I think Mike White, Skyler has not impressed me at all. And, we can kind of talk, we don't have to talk about, but the Jacksonville Jaguars game, he looks just like very inconsistent. One of the interceptions, he had Cedric wide open. He decided to throw a 100-mile-an-hour fastball, and it was too high, and it was tipped and interception. Like, these are layup passes, dude. So I think Mike White gives you consistency, which is, or he gives you a little more reliability, which ironic because he's in concussion protocol. Well, actually, he's out of it, I think. But I just think that, Skyler hasn't shown me enough to be like, you deserve it. Because Mike White looked good out there. He looked good when he was in the game starting against the Falcons. We just didn't get to see him much in Houston, and then he got a concussion. So,
yeah. And then the only thing I kind of just want to say about as far as QB2 goes, like if for some reason, and unfortunately, I think it's going to happen at some point in the season, Mike White's going to have to come in and play. if he doesn't have a good game, you know how Dolphins fans are since Skylar Thompson was good in preseason, not this year, but now it's last year. They're going to be rumblings like how there was for a starting quarterback. People thought Skylar should be playing. But yeah, if Mike White's not lighting it up, you know, people are going to be calling to put in Skylar. So it's a lose-lose for the team and for Mike White. But Skylar's a beneficiary of it. But we'll see if either of them have to go in.
Yeah,
It's not great. And then anything else on quarterbacks, or you want to move down to skill position?
Let's go position by position. What running backs aside from Raheem do you have making the roster? How many and who do you have?
So I have Jeff Wilson, Salvan Ahmed. Geez, I can't say
Salvan Ahmed.
Yeah, I do. And Devon A-Chain.
Okay.
I don't think they're going to put A-Chain on IR, so I'm giving him a full roster spot.
I agree.
My 4.
I agree. I man, after the game he had, like I would go as far as like with Jeff Wilson. It's a little fishy, no pun intended, because we're talking about the Dolphins, but it's a little fishy what's going on there because I'm not sure what the issue is, if they're just putting him on bubble wrap till the season started, or if they are saying, hey, he might be in a trade package, because Mike McDaniel, now he could lie, but McDaniel said Jeff Wilson could have played today, you know, in regards to the Jacksonville game. But like Raheem's injured all the time. Teron was practicing more than Jeff Wilson. He's injured all the time. So not really sure what's going on with Jeff Wilson. But the way Chris Brooks looked, I mean, if Salvan Ahmed did not have the preseason he had, I would easily put Chris Brooks on here, because I think he's the only healthy back on this team right now that you can rely on to get you a first down on 3rd and 2. I mean, he runs so hard, and he has good vision. He has decent speed. He is a Jeff Wilson Jr. I should say he's a Jeff Wilson III, because Jeff Wilson Jr. is a junior, but he's a Jeff Wilson clone essentially. And so I worry about him on the practice squad about getting poached. And I really, if I wouldn't have any issue if he made it and Jeff Wilson got cut, because if you cut him after June 1st, which would be now, you actually save money. And I think honestly, they're trying to maybe even use him possibly in a trade. But yeah, Chris Brooks, I just can't see making the 53, but that's so hard because, I did yards per carry of guys in the preseason, and the top 3 guys were Salvan Ahmed, Myles Gaskin, and Chris Brooks. Chris Brooks was averaging 4.7 yards per carry in the preseason. And I had someone say, it's just a preseason. That doesn't matter. And I'm like, he's trying to make a roster. It does matter. Like, is he supposed to go out and get 1 yard per carry? And that's going to help him. Right. Like it was concerning to me that Raheem Mostert averaged less than 4 yards a carry in the preseason. That's not super ideal. I know what he did last season, but Salvan kind of does that every preseason, to be honest. And even Salvan, I'm not going to lie, even after the preseason he had, if you said we know what he is, we know he did great, but we know what he is. He's been here many years. We'd rather take the chance with Brooks. You're not gonna hear an uproar from me. I might be a little surprised, but I wouldn't be mad or anything.
And as far as I agree with you, like if I'm going just by preseason, Chris Brooks 100% deserves a spot on the team. He probably had one of the best preseasons for anyone on the team, honestly. But yeah, just the way, unfortunately, as a running back, and the money you're making, the assets that we traded to San Francisco would get factored in, even though they shouldn't. It should just be what you produce.
And they definitely regret having Jeff Wilson on the roster. Some people say Raheem too. I know. I think they regret Jeff Wilson. I think that was a panic mode. But yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. And then I don't have any other fullback. I'm not sure if one of I can't tell you, to be truthful, if Julian Hill could play fullback. I'm not aware of his skill set.
They use these guys a little bit everywhere. So in an I formation traditional, I don't think. But, the way they use Alec Ingold, they kind of have packages and use him in multiple different ways. I think, yes, like what you're saying, like Julian Hill could do some of the stuff Alec Ingold does, because he's not always just used as a traditional fullback.
Yeah. And then I do. So next, Yeah, I'm
Wide
not saying you have
receivers?
anything else to say. Yeah, wide
No,
receiver.
no, nothing there.
Yeah, I got Cedric Wilson,
Okay.
Eric Azukama,
Mm-hmm.
and I also did lastly put River Craycraft. More so because I think if he doesn't make the team, he's going to get signed somewhere else. So I think if they want him, and I do think they want him, he's going to have to be on the 53. I chosen Anderson, Robbie chosen, whichever his name is, did not show anything significant to me that I feel like he should be on the team. I know he was a great talent a couple years ago, but I don't know. I think it may be over for him in the NFL as a whole. I do think he'd get signed somewhere else though, because of what he's produced in the past, but I wouldn't put him on the team. I think he's probably going to make the team, honestly, but my 53, I did not put him on there. What do you have for receivers?
Yeah, so wide receivers, aside from the obvious, because Waddle, Hill, Barrios, we know. Ezukama, Cedric Wilson, I think will be on the team unless I don't think they're going to cut him and take the cap hit. If they can trade him, wouldn't be shocked at all. And it was I sat there and I was like, do I want 7 or 6 wide receivers? And I ended up choosing 7. I kept Robbie chosen. And I think that he will be cut and possibly brought back after they designate people at IR. But it's one of those where I wouldn't be surprised at all. He was actually off of my 53 for a long time. But it's just one of those where it's like, I don't really see the motivation. I don't see the drive, the hunger. Like he should be without a doubt the third best wide receiver on this team. It shouldn't even be close. And, when he's out there, it kind of looks, for lack of a better word, half-assed at times. He's running the route in the red zone. And, again, it's stuff like that where it's like, if this is a real game situation, you cost us 7 points just now, right? Because you don't know which way you're going. I think Craycraft, if I'm picking between the two, offers me more as a blocker. He offers me more in special teams. So yeah, I'm like you. I think he will be on the team, maybe cut and then brought back. But I'm not tied to it either way. I just really, I was disappointed. I expected him to kind of, if we talk talent wise on the team, other than Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, he's next. He's better than Barrios for sure. But here we are talking about him maybe not even making it over, River Craycraft. So.
Yeah, which is crazy. I know a lot of people were excited when he got signed, but as through preseason training camp, it hasn't been much there to show me that he cares, like you said, honestly, which is a shame.
Right.
But yeah, then moving along to tight ends here. I have Julian Hill and Elijah Higgins. I would cut Eric Salvo. I don't see the potential. And if this tight end room was even like the worst NFL tight end room on a normal season, like this tight end room is so bad. Like these guys are not good. I think Durham Smythe on most teams would probably be a tight end 3, but Elijah Higgins had some nice potential. So I'm excited for the future with him. But yeah, those would be the 3 tight ends in.
Yeah, I actually didn't know like what you were going to do with tight end until just now. I was like, I wonder if he's going to keep Saubert. I didn't keep Saubert either. I've heard rumors floating around that they might agree to an injury settlement with him. But I agree with you. Not a fan at all of Eric Saubert. Like not even kind of. I don't really know how he's made it this far. There was a rep on special teams last week, not this past week, against the Texans where they did like a squib kick and it looked like he was trying to take it instead of Devon A-Chain. And then he just runs down the field and doesn't even block anyone. Like it looks like he's about to block. He pulled like a Mike Gesicki where it's like the thought was there, but the actual action wasn't. With Elijah Higgins, going back and starting up, I like Elijah Higgins. It's unfortunate for him because he's being asked to play one of the hardest positions to transition to into the NFL, and he's never played it before. But I think that just the athleticism, the ways you can use him, like they would have used Bretton Strange, which I liked how he looked with the Jaguars. They got him. But there's ways you can use him to where even if you don't use him as a traditional tight end, he's a weapon. Julian Hill, I think, is guaranteed tight end too. I wouldn't change that. And I actually like Durham Smythe probably a little more than you and more than most people. I think in this scheme, with the talent we have at other positions, he's everything you need. He can block, and he's a good blanket for you on like a 3rd and 9, like we saw against the Texans, where it's 3rd and 9, dude, just get open and catch the ball and fall to the ground. We don't need you to do anything more. So the tight end room definitely isn't a strength of this team, but yeah, I would definitely keep those 3. I think keeping Eric Sauber is a waste of a roster spot. I'll go as far to say that. So,
yeah. And then I would personally, I'd like to see us upgrade the tight end. Like that would be one of the things.
Oh, 100%. Wouldn't be shocked at all. Yeah.
Yeah. With some of the people that got caught, I'd like to see us upgrade the tight end room from, sign someone from another team. Again, I don't have a specific name in mind. I haven't been able to, I'm
someone to be in depth.
Tight end 3 or something. A nice depth piece here. Yeah, I don't think you can get anyone better than maybe Durham Smythe. I'm not sure, to be honest with you. But.
And I will say Elijah Higgins, if it's any indicator, he only played 4. I know it ended early, but he only played 4 snaps against Jacksonville. So, that's take with that what you want. But he's another guy. I don't feel warm and fuzzy about his chances making the roster. But this is just, if I were to do it, why not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think he does. I think they just kind of do what they did with Hunter Long, like just totally redshirt. He won't play a snap.
Right. Just let him develop, groom him. You don't really need him at all.
Yeah. And all right. So moving along here to the O-line. Let me hear your first year, because I've made this before Robert Jones got hurt. So I'm going to look at it just to see who I have as the last person. And so your depth
I'm keeping if Robert Jones wouldn't have gotten injured, I don't know. I've seen a lot of people say that Lester Cotton they don't think would make it, but I'd put Lester Cotton over. Liam Eichenberg was able to play, and he didn't this past week. I don't know, like Liam Eichenberg did not play in the game, and he was able to. So I don't feel confident about him making the 53. But if I'm being asked, I obviously have the same starting lineup as you. Kendall Lamb and Dan Feeney, I think, are guaranteed. And then I'm putting Liam Eichenberg on there because, I think that you need a backup left guard. And it seems that the consensus among a lot of people is that he isn't playing well and he won't make a roster. And then Robert Jones, obviously, when he comes back, would be your backup right guard, which would mean that in total you have 9 offensive linemen, which is typical. But the fact that Dan Feeney can play multiple positions, Kendall Lamb can play left or right tackle, you can kind of switch it up. And so ultimately I only kept 8 because Robert Jones, I think, will be back by like week 2 or 3, or he'll be back by week 5, obviously, because he'll be on IR. And I think that realistically you could probably make do till then with those guys. So I think those are the 8 that make it.
Yeah, I agree with you for actually everyone. Lester Cotton would be my last person in. And then I'm looking at the names now, and I don't know. I guess I honestly, I don't know if I'd put any of these guys in with Robert Jones out. Yeah, I think I'd give a roster spot or maybe a D tackle or something. And again, this would be a position I would like to see with some of the guys get cut, go out and get some guys just for depth, developmental pieces. Like, I don't see the development track with some of the undrafted rookies they have, like with James Tunstall, or as some people are calling him, Turnstile.
No.
I don't see why you'd have him on the practice squad at all. Like, I'd like us to do some stuff here O-line wise. The Dolphins have never been able to scout like O-linemen, even from they've had some solid first round picks, like going back, like Mike Pouncey, but I mean, like Liam Eichenberg,
it's their weakness. It's his Achilles heel. It's Chris Greer's Achilles heel. Some people say it's defensive back, but I don't agree. It's Noah's the only miss. So yeah, he's nailed everything else. So his only Achilles heel, which it just happens to be one of the most important position groups. But yeah, it's offensive line for sure.
And then going back, even like Jonathan Martin, we drafted him and he did not work out. And then Godfrey, like, let alone in the first 3 rounds, we can scout talent, let alone in the 6th, 7th, or undrafted. We have miss after miss. There's countless ones.
And then
Turner.
the one time you do hit with the Laramie Tunsil, he's traded.
Exactly. Yep. But yeah, that'd be the offense here. I'd like to see us do a couple, get some people from other teams that get cut.
Yeah.
To be honest with you. But yeah, moving along here to defense.
Interior defensive line.
Yeah, unless you got anything else to say about offense, I'll go ahead and start with my. You want to do the starters again, or just go position by position?
You can just go position. Let's do interior defensive line first, and then we'll go edge.
All right. Yeah, that sounds good. So I got Christian Wilkins, Raekwon Davis, Zach Sieler, and Deshaun Hand. And then I added AJ Johnson, who we signed. Did he play in the preseason game? I did not notice if he did.
I think to be honest, towards the end of it, I mean, towards the end of it, once I saw it, like, again, like there were certain people that were not playing a lot of snaps at all that I was like, why aren't they out there? This is weird. So I was kind of getting disinterested. And then right as I was like, you know what, I should be paying attention a little bit more, because I was just going to go watch the replay. The game got stopped. So I was like, so I never really, I don't know if he did. I think he's going to be practice squad though anyway, because I agree with all of the names. I actually added Brandon Pilley in there. I think I'm
a fan.
I think Brandon Pilley or Deshaun Hand, one of those guys is going to get cut and then brought back on. Again, one of those IR things. But I wouldn't mind, but certainly regardless, this is another position where if there's a veteran out there that you can bring in, please do it, because Raekwon Davis, I don't know what the heck's going on. Raekwon Davis is 6'7", 330. He should be unguardable. He should be unguardable. So, but yeah, I agree with all of them. I just added Brandon Pilley because I think that we're stretched thin at interior defensive line. And so I think out of all of them, those are really the only two guys I could make a case for being on a 53-man roster.
Yeah. And I personally, the only reason I didn't put Brandon Pilley on is because I think he could be on the practice squad. I don't think another team would claim him.
Wouldn't be shocked.
I wouldn't be shocked if someone did, but I think he could make, we'd be able to just stash him on the practice squad here.
Yeah.
But yeah, that'd be mine. Any other thoughts? It's going to be interesting when Wilkins does come back here, you know, if a contract is not agreed to by then, what we start seeing, because Zach Sieler is going to produce, like we said, he's going to have a couple big plays a game, and is Wilkins hungry? You know, he's got to go out and prove he's worth what he wants. If the Dolphins don't think he is, and he has a chance to go out and prove it, I'd like to see him do it. I really would.
Yeah.
And then, so moving along to edge here, I have Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb as your obvious starters. And then I have Emmanuel Ogbah, and I also put Van Ginkel as sort of outside linebacker.
Yeah, me
he's
too.
Kind of a flex, you know, I heard he could be playing middle at some point.
Yeah, they'll use him as need be, depending on the package they're rolling out.
But yeah, that'd be mine. I
agree with you. If Emmanuel Ogbah, obviously, if they're able to find a suitor, a name to keep an eye for would probably be either Cameron Good or Garrett Nelson. Those would be maybe names because of special teams and stuff like that. But I agree with you on the main four. I think it's pretty clear right there. I think it's one of your deepest positions. Again, you got four people who have all, two of which are studs. The other two have been starters and have had a lot of impact plays for the Dolphins. So I don't think edge is ever really going to be concerned for this team unless a lot of injuries are happening.
Yep. And then move along here to linebackers. Two of the guys who I thought had pretty good preseasons as far as starters go, David Long and Jerome Baker. Jerome Baker with the key fumble at the goal line. That was nice to see, because I've been kind of
him and Javon. Yeah, I think Javon, it's arguable. Some people say Jerome knocked it out. Some people say Javon. The point is they were both in on it.
And then, so I have those two. And then Duke Riley and Channing Tindall would be my linebackers. Yeah,
I wouldn't be shocked if, you know, again, it depends on what it's a numbers game. So I don't know what numbers you're out and stuff, but I wouldn't be shocked if you kept Mitchell Gude and Aubrey Miller, because number-wise, it makes sense for me to keep them with the injuries now to like someone like Elijah Campbell and Robert Jones, to where they might have taken up those two spots. It might make sense for you to keep them And then after 4 weeks, when the other guys can come back, you put them back on your practice squad. But yeah, I have the same guys as you, and I wouldn't be shocked if they kept 2 other guys because of the numbers game with where I'm at right now. I think Mitchell Gude, special teams, and then Aubrey Miller. I really liked. Remember, I was talking about him before training camp and mini camps and OTAs. I was talking about him, saying him and Elijah Higgins were the guys I was looking forward to. They were my standouts, and I've heard rumblings that he has a high chance to make the 53. So I would say I have 6 actually. Don't expect them to be on this the roster all season, but for numbers game.
Yeah, and honestly, I think the last 2-3 guys, like with Robert, this again, I made this before Robert Jones and Elijah Campbell. I'd probably agree with you. I'd put probably Mitchell Agude.
Right.
And I think I'd put Brandon Pilley again would be in over Robert Jones, or with Robert Jones being
right. Got you.
So
yeah,
and I think Aubrey Miller again. I think he could be stashed on the practice squad, and then as injuries he can come to the 53 and go back and forth. So that would be the reason why I didn't have him on. But I do think he'll be seeing special team snaps for part of the season. Anything else as far as linebackers?
No, let's finish it off with secondary.
Yeah. So starting secondary, I'll do all 4 here. Obviously Jalen Ramsey, we already said he's going to be on IR, but he'd be CB1, and then Xavier Howard. But the starter I have for week 1 with Ramsey being out would be Cater. I think he's going to line up opposite, and then Javon Holland and Deshaun Elliott would be my other starters here. And making the team, I have Cam Smith, Noah Igbo does it again. He gets in again. And
every year they pull me back in.
It's the famous line. Just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in.
Yeah.
Eli Apple, and then I had Elijah Campbell, but he'd be on the IR. Verone McKinley, I do have making it, and Brandon Jones as well.
Yeah. Same lineup I got. Cornerbacks wise, again, I think it'll be Xavier Cater and Eli Apple will be the starters. However, again, you're rotating them and using them. Noah and Cam, I have making it. This guy that actually interests me, he won't make the team, but on the practice squad is Perry Nickerson. He plays slot. Who knows? They might even go for like a Bryce Callahan, depending on the depth at slot. But safeties, I think Holland and Elliott are your clear starters. And then I think McKinley and Jones, because of the injury to Elijah Campbell, I think Verone slides in there. I didn't have him originally, but I think with the injury, he slides in there. And then I think they'll keep him just because I think they're going to need him, with the injuries and everything. Because, again, like you look at Elijah Campbell's probably going to be out same timeline like as a Jalen Ramsey. I think he'll be out most of the season. So you're going to need him in there. And then Brandon Jones has injuries. So that's another position where I could see them, maybe cutting one other person. Maybe it's an extra wide receiver or something like that and bringing in an extra safety. Because right now you only got 4 guys. So, but yeah, I agree pretty much overall. The whole entire secondary, I think we all got the same.
Yeah. And I defensively, I don't think they will be looking to guys that got cut from other teams. I think the defense is kind of set. And yeah, I mean, that's that. That's a 53. I don't expect us to be 100%. I think we'll probably be pretty close. So I think most people, when you're doing this exercise, can get pretty close.
Probably about, I would say about a couple, like it's like the Mitchell Agudes, the Deshaun Hand, Brandon Pilley, the Aubrey Miller, and then maybe like the Robbie Chosen. That's really all I don't feel confident in, but I feel like out of the 53, I feel confident with about 46 of them. And that's how these teams are too. They have pretty much like 40 to 45 of them already figured out before preseason game 3 anyway. So
yeah, well, that's the 53. And then pretty much, as we kind of said, our depth chart starting for week 1. Yeah. Anything else? Anything to add? Any players' practice squad thoughts? Anything you got?
No, we'll see the next 2 days between the Jonathan Taylor stuff and then the 53. Everything will hopefully kind of get settled in.
Yeah. And then as we kind of were saying before, I think next week here, we'll kind of do a bit of a season sort of outlook, kind of not game by game breakdown, but kind of look at it from a holistic standpoint, what we expect from the season, our overall thoughts, what to look forward to, the big games, I guess, true tests, everything. We'll kind of play it by ear. And then we'll do a week 1 preview. Take a look at the Chargers here, how we match up, what we expect them to do, what we expect we'll see. But yeah, other than that, you got any closing thoughts here before we wrap up?
No, nothing much. Can't wait till the next episode.
Me as well. Well, guys, from me, Anthony, and producer Joel, thank you as always for all the support. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. And from us here at Dolphins versus the World, let's go Fins.